morning, boss. Yeah. You're the boss, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's a piece of cake, isn't it? It's beautiful, isn't it? Oh, it's easy. Come on, you're the boss. Everybody wants to be the boss, right? Okay, you just got to get a strategy and then, make sure everybody understands it and does it, right? What's the problem? What's the problem? Well, I'm going to talk about people effectiveness. I'm not here from the personnel department or from human resources. I'm talking about people. I'm going to talk about, and they're not just your employees, it's you. It's Sarah. What do you do every day? What do you do every day, Chris? What do you do every day? Do you do strategy? Do you do strategy?
I deal with people.
She deals with people. Really? How come you're not dealing with strategy? How come you're not dealing with strategy?
Because somebody didn't show up.
Okay, because somebody didn't show up. I really like the candor. That's what we're here to talk about. I'm not here to talk about just, the 401k plan that you might offer or something like that. I'm here to talk about building a great company and its people. And guess what? You're one of those people. And by the way, you can really screw it up. Okay? Because you're the most important person. You are what? The boss. Okay. So I want to know, how do you build a great company? Clearly, you need a strategy. But I want to position your company, your inner city companies, for long-term success, right? Do people make a difference to that? Really? Russ, do they make a difference? Shout it out.
Absolutely.
Why?
If they're not there, nothing happens.
If they're not there, nothing happens. If they're just there, sitting in their chair, what else? Raymond, what else? Why did they make a difference?
Well, if they're not doing nothing, nothing's getting done.
Nothing's getting done. Why else? If they're not doing anything, nothing's getting done. Yes. Shout it out.
I believe your business is only as good as the people that are working there.
Your business is only as good as the people, but I thought the strategy was most important. Isn't this going to be a little confusing?
It's all important.
You cannot execute on that strategy without people. Now, I have been a small business owner. I have been an investor. I have been a college professor. And most recently, I have been a management consultant. I work for the largest human resource consulting firm called Towers Watson. I would go into meetings with CEOs of big companies, and they would say to me, human resources is our most important asset. Gag me with a spoon. Half of your workforce just quit. How could they be your most important asset? I'm here, and you just told me there's nothing I can do for you, but you want to see if there is something I can do for you. So really, we always hear this phrase, our people are our most important asset. Yeah? Well, how come we got all these issues? Because people are complicated. What do you all want? You all want motivated talent at the right price, with the right skills, at the right time. Okay? That's what I want you. And by the way, that is you. That is you. You've got to be doing the right things at the right time. So, Keith, are you always doing the right things at the right time? No, I really appreciate the honesty of Keith. Why aren't you always doing the right things at the right time?
Sometimes it's maybe reactional, or maybe not understanding what's the better alternative.
Sometimes I'm reacting. A lot of the time. I'm here to talk to you about small businesses. Businesses like yours, with 20 employees. Sometimes you've got to do a lot of things that really aren't strategic, that you have to pay attention to. 1 in 2 CEOs lose sleep over people issues. Are you those 1 in 2? Yes. Oh my, and it's really higher than just 1 in 2, right? Really, people lose sleep over people issues. Sometimes, what are some of the people issues you lose sleep over? Nicole, what are some of the... I call on people so you can't fall asleep, okay?
Incompetency.
What?
Incompetency.
Incompetency. She didn't even say competency. She said incompetency. Ariane.
Hiring people who are friends or family and then can't make it with
Woo, hiring friends and family. I wouldn't want to tell you the number of family businesses I've worked in. And I'm not just talking about small businesses. I'm talking about very big businesses. Construction businesses are the worst. Really, everybody's got somebody's brother who called them up and said, you can work in this business, right?
No question.
No question. And your name is Ron, right? Ron says no question. I'm right about at least one thing today. That's right. And that's a particular business where everybody decides, oh, my cousin Billy is unemployed, so let's come to work for Ron. Okay. So we lose sleep over these people issues, but I'm going to be a little bit different than Professor Porter in this sense. I think that executing strategy is always through your people. Okay? So you want to talk about product and service quality? If you've got an incompetent person, as Nicole said, your quality is going to suffer. If you don't have the right people who know what to do about innovation, that's going to suffer. What is productivity? What is productivity when it comes to people? Off the top. Yeah, Nicole.
Some way, form, they are covering the expense that they are.
That's right. It is the ratio of your people costs to what they put in, to what they produce. That is the coverage cost. Said perfectly by Nicole. So marketing and sales results, right? Well, if I've got a good strategy, I just turn it over to the marketing and sales people, right? I see a shaking face. I'm sorry, I can't see your name.
Oh, Abby.
Abby. Why don't you just turn it over to Salesforce and they do their thing, right?
Because in executing the strategy through marketing and sales, they have to be clear about which customer they're going to target, what trade-offs they're going to make. And if they're not clear on that, they can
really screw it up.
Exactly.
They have to be clear, but what else do they have to be?
Well,
Motivated. Who said motivated? Rose said motivated. They not only have to be clear, but they have to be motivated. So it's not enough for the CEO to say, here's our strategy. It's brilliant. Now let's just go execute it, right? Okay? Somehow there have to be lots of different people motivating. Now, in a small company, who is the chief motivator? Not you. Rose, what? I.
Oh, I mean
I, not me. I'm not going to be your motivator. You are.
I meant you collectively as CEOs that are people who are here running the organization.
That's right. I am the motivator. I am also the chief cook and bottle washer at times, right? Customer satisfaction. Your employees. If they don't know how to help you achieve that, that's a real problem and great fun. And it's not about being nice. It's about being real. And how are you real? And what does that really mean? There are going to be so many questions and issues I'm not going to answer in the course of about an hour and 15 minutes. I'm just not going to be able to. What this discussion is about is raising those questions. Now, I don't recommend a book because there's 50,000 books about people issues. The first book about people issues, which talks about how people should be treated, that we all know is what? The Bible, said Russ, right? The Bible. What does the Bible teach us? What, verily?
The golden rule.
The golden rule, which is?
Do unto others as others would do unto you.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay? So we've been talking about this for 2,500 years, and we still haven't got it right, right? And that's sort of the problem. But here are a set of things. First of all, I take from strategy a mission. You got to be able to say very quickly what that salesperson is really supposed to do. Okay? What is this company about? Number two, you got to stay externally focused. What do I mean by externally focused? Let's hear from Jeremy. What's externally focused? Speak up.
Not on yourself.
Not on yourself. Focused on what?
Other people.
What else? What else? Your customers. How do you stay externally focused when your cousin Billy wants a job? Okay? How do you stay externally focused? How many people have a problem in their organizations with external focus? Being honest. Okay? It's hard. Strong leader or leaders. Frankly, I don't buy the notion that strategy all comes from the CEO. It comes from different people. One of the most successful carpet companies I know had a sales force who came in and talked to the CEO and said, look, we can't compete on price anymore. We've got to actually make a cheaper carpet. It's got to be a lighter carpet. We've got to do a lot of different things, and we don't know how to do it, but we can't sell this stuff anymore. And they use some vile words in that context. We can't sell this stuff. That's how strategy gets started too. Teamwork. You being a leader, strong leaders, you need lots of leaders, right? Delegation. I love Professor Porter's work. It's so important. He's not here right now, and I've talked with him in the past. But hey, it's not a big problem. What did he say when you have strategy? What's the second thing you do? What did he say? Delegate, okay? Are you delegating enough? How many people delegate enough? Wow, I didn't get a hand. I got 2 hands. Okay, I got 3 hands. So you know how to delegate. How many people don't delegate enough? Okay, why don't you not delegate enough, Thomas? Speak up.
Trust.
Trust. Trust. If we don't do anything today, at least this will be an honest session. I appreciate trust. Why don't you trust? You don't trust what? What's your business, by the way?
It's Social Driver. We're a social media agency.
Oh, okay.
So maybe the people that are working on the project might be newer to the company.
They might be newer? What else?
Voice.
What?
Voice.
Voice. What do you mean by voice?
They're not people can execute your message.
They're not people who who can execute your message. Yes.
Competence.
Competence. Okay?
You're not getting the employee you need for the dollar you're able to pay.
That's right. So we've got to have an external focus. We've got to have strong leaders. Strong leaders means delegating. We've got to have teamwork. That's what delegation is all about. We've got to have an engaged workforce. Who is an engaged employee? Give me a definition of an engaged employee. Yes, sir.
I was going to say, I'm an engaged employee.
Wow. And you're the CEO too, right?
Correct.
Okay. How about the rest of your employees? Are they engaged?
70-30.
70-30.
are-
How do you define an engaged employee?
They look forward to coming to work. They're motivated and they're happy with what they're doing.
They're motivated, they're happy. Not only that, yes,
They buy into the mission and they're innovative. They bring new ideas.
they bring new ideas. They buy in. What else? They take ownership. They take ownership. Now, one thing you'll see about this course is that I sort of teach is there are no right or wrong answers. There are a lot of good answers. They're motivated. They're competent. They take ownership. And what?
Problem solver.
They're problem solvers, not problem givers. Okay? I don't call them employees. They're not my employees. If they were your employees, it's like they're your inventory. Okay? You need people who can operate really fully in that sense. And they go beyond what's expected. Okay? If you expect them to just do what you laid out in the customer guide, you want something more, okay? And you do also need to look at their competencies and what they are. What's interesting about Vanguard, the company that is the giant financial services company they were the first company that said we need different competencies. If we're going to be the low-cost provider, and if anybody knows about Vanguard, you call them up and you ask them for something. What do we need? What do we need? If we're going to do everything, and we call them up and ask for it, what do we need? What kind of competency do we need? Diverse, but what's a specific competency you need if you're going to have people sort of doing a different model, not meeting with you personally? They got to be able to talk on the phone. They got to be able to communicate on the phone, which is not easy. And you also have to figure out how you're going to measure that. So these are the principles I want you to leave thinking about. So you've got to figure, if that woman is on the phone, do I want her on the phone for more than 20 minutes? Do I want her on the phone for 15 minutes? You've got to think about what all the competencies are. A friend of mine who does construction got into the business of assisted living facilities, which is a very important business. And what is fascinating about that is the amount of measurement you've got to do. And, you know, it's creepy measurement, okay? It's a little bit spooky to sort of talk about. But when you're doing assisted living and you're talking about dementia units, what do you have to figure on? What's the measurement you have to use? What's a critical measure? Think about it. Wheelchairs. What else? Door handles. You've got to think about that's not measurement, that's the design. But what do you have to measure? What's going to be a critical measure of success? What did you say? What did somebody say back here? What's your name? Keisha. How long is this person going to be here? It's a creepy thing to discuss. But is she going to be here for 10 years? 5 years? What happens if she goes into a dementia unit? How much more services does she need? What are the different issues that are involved? And that makes the difference with assisted living companies. An assisted living company is just not making geriatric people happy. It really, you need measurement, because if someone is only going to be there 2 years, and on average in assisted living, I was startled to learn it's 2.5 years, then you have to be ready for what? Turnover. And that means if you've got a sales model, what do you got to do? In very coarse terms, Gabrielle, you got to catch them. You got to get some in. Okay? And then lastly, you need this agile, flexible structure. You got to be able to move. You've got to be able to change your organization. With small organizations, you can. But what's the problem with agile organizations? What do people always want to know? What do they want to know when they're working there? What keeps you from being agile? Think about it. You want to have a flexible organization. What's the problem? You say to all your employees, be flexible, be flexible. Yes? How much flexibility? Yes? Losing focus? You can if you're too agile. But what from the employee perspective? What does the employee always want to know? What? How much? What's the next job? When do I get to be a manager? I don't need that many managers. I want to stay flexible. Well, maybe you don't need that many managers, but I want to be a manager. Okay? So how do I sort of look at these sort of things? And then aligned systems. Aligned systems mean everything. As Professor Porter said, what's one of the most important aligned systems from the viewpoint of the employee?
Compensation.
Oh, there it is. Compensation. Why?
Money makes the world go round.
Money makes the world go round. That's not only the issue, but from the employee perspective, what else is it? Yes?
They have to live, they have to have a quality of life.
They have to live, they have to have a quality of life. But when we talk about alignment, what are we really talking about? What? Rewarding the work. What? Fairness. Okay? I want to understand how all this works for me. Okay? And sustaining your talent. I want to, if you want to be here, so somebody wrote in a question for me, which is, how do you incentivize people other than with pay? Okay? Recognition. What are other ways? Vacation. What else?
Schedule flexibility.
Benefits. Authority. Input into decisions. Training. If you ask millennials, number one on their list of what they want, and we always talk about millennials, what do they want more than anything else? Who said, what did you say? They want experience, but just the experience, like going to the train station? They want, as Rianne said, they want growth and opportunity. Okay? So I will sacrifice a little bit of pay if you tell me I'm learning what? To this woman from computer services, what?
I'm adding value.
I'm adding value, but not only that, you gave me a skill. Okay? So if I have an opportunity to learn something new, then I'm willing to forego the pay. And that's what high-tech companies can do well. That's what a construction company can do well. You can teach somebody, you can say, okay, I can't pay you as much as this, but I can make you the project manager on something. I can make you in charge of something. I've never met a better manager than one of the senior managers I know at Boeing, who had 2,500 employees, and he told his managers every day to find something new for his engineers to do. If they hadn't worked on the bathroom, work on the bathroom in a plane. Okay? And if they hadn't worked on the lighting in a plane, work on the lighting in a plane. The size of the bathroom. Choose a new toilet. You know, this may seem mundane, but all of a sudden a person was doing something with a lot of responsibility, and that's what aligned systems are about. Okay, product, you got this customer, you got this business strategy, you even have a marketing plan you're going to hear from Gail Taylor about. Okay? Then you really need to be able to articulate what this company is about. That's what I call a mission. Okay? So, who has a mission? Yes. This woman here, Chazelle. What's the mission of your company? What's your company?
We're a sales and use tax controversy firm.
A what?
We do sales and use tax refund recovery.
Okay.
And audit defense.
And what's your mission?
Our mission is to be the industry leader for sales tax products.
Okay.
Yes.
That's your mission. And what is it going to take to do that mission? What are some other... People do not, they take their strategy, but they don't concisely give it a burning platform. Okay? And that's what you really need to do in certain kinds of ways if you're going to succeed. It's got to be shared. And it's not a paperweight. Okay? It's not just something on a card. So if you look at some missions of some motivated organizations where people went to work for very little money because they believed in the mission. Our mission is to give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected. Whose mission is that? Facebook. Who said it? Chris? Speak up.
Facebook.
Facebook. It is the mission of Facebook. And originally, when Mark Zuckerberg, it's one of his geniuses, when he started a small firm and they didn't have a lot of money and things to do, they had a mission. They were going to connect the world. Now, what is the second mission? Our mission is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. This is a trick question. Whose mission is that? That's Facebook too. That's the new Facebook mission. Why did they change the mission? Why did they change the mission? Chris says they accomplished the first one. Not necessarily. What? The environment changed. How did it change? Carol, how did it change? It was more global. But this is different. It sort of talks about the power to build community and bring the world closer together. Yeah. It was a lot of different groups and things like that, but there's another element. What happened in the last 9 months?
Wanted it.
What happened in the last 12 months?
Raise your hand so I can get to you.
Yes, what happened? New president. But what else did we learn about Facebook? What did we learn about Facebook? Yes, ma'am. People were getting isolated. We actually learned that it could be a negative force. That being connected enabled people to say horrible things about Sarah. Okay? that you could do some negative things. So they changed their mission to give power to people to build community and bring the world closer together. It wasn't a neutral statement anymore, because many employees of Facebook felt like they got used. And what did we find out the other day? 70 million pieces of false information were conveyed through Facebook by the Russians. Okay? It is an incredibly interesting thing. So if I want to keep my own employees motivated, I got to change my mission a little bit. We are the cognitive solutions and cloud platform company with a focus on industry expertise. Whose mission is that? This is a company you know. No, it's not Microsoft. It's not Google. It's IBM. Why? Because IBM no longer is making a big statement. It's no longer about PCs and mainframes, and it needed to switch out a lot of employees and say to an employee who used to be the guy who was, or the woman in a blue suit, who was willing to go everywhere and do things, we're going to be the cognitive solutions company and the cloud platform company. Does that really move you? Does it really move you? No. It doesn't really move Robert. But who is it designed to move? Who is it designed to move? They're employees, number one. So if you don't understand what that really means for you, you better look for another job with a focus on industry expertise. Who else was it supposed to appeal to? Customers. What kind of customers? Who are their customers now? You? Other businesses. So with a focus on industry expertise, if I'm the CEO of a major hospital anywhere in the United States, and there are 10 of them in Washington, I need someone who can give me cognitive solutions in the cloud so that I can connect better than anyone else in these sort of worlds. Okay, the last mission, drive economic prosperity in America's inner cities through private sector investment to create jobs, income, and wealth. Whose mission is that? ICCC. Now, I'll give you an example of how a CEO works that does that. I live in the same town as Steve Grossman. I do a lot of different things, keep me busy. And I ran into him, and he told me the mission of the company. He told me I should really get involved. He said this mission really made a difference. He said, just give me a half hour with Hyacinth and me down in their offices in Boston, and just, I want you to get involved. He's the kind of person, as a CEO, by the time I was done between him and Hyacinth, in 20 minutes, you can't say no. You got to get involved. But in fact, the mission made sense to me. The mission is powerful. The mission I buy into. I could be involved with other not-for-profits, and I am. But this was a mission that I found really powerful. So if you can do a mission, it makes a difference. You and your employees have to be externally focused. When I worked for a major consulting firm, we had a receptionist in our office of 150 consultants who knew every client's first name, who would ask about every client when they came in. The clients, when she wasn't there, asked about her. We then discussed that she should be paid the same as an executive secretary. And a lot of the executive secretaries said, well, I'm not so sure. But we said, this is what you need. You need to have external focus. She's the most externally focused person I know. She doesn't think about any baloney. You need to listen to your customers. Tell us what we can do better. You need to benchmark. Now, I'm going to say one thing about benchmarking. Professor Porter is big on benchmarking. I think benchmarking is good for big companies to some extent, and it's always important to understand what other companies do. But when you're a small company, don't worry about the Snow White effect. Because the Snow White effect is, remember the queen in Snow White? What did she say to the mirror? Who's the fairest of them all? And the mirror said, you are, up to a certain extent, but not Snow White. But McDonald's, one of the biggest companies in the world, used to measure itself and benchmark everybody else. What did it benchmark on? Number of burgers sold, what they call quality service value, the right price. What did they miss? And they benchmarked and they said, we're still the best and we're still making more money than everybody. What their customer wants. Who came with a different focus and a different strategy? Who? Panera came. What did Panera say? Clean food, fresh food. Fresh food, higher quality, fresh food. What else did they also say? What else did they also realize? Value. Why? What could they do? What did Panera do? They charged more. Okay? So if I'm just looking at fast food places and I'm thinking, how do I get the lowest price? How do I get the certain quality? And I'm not thinking about, you've got to be careful when you benchmark. Who else came in with a quality value price differential? Chipotle came in and said, we're going to be much fresher, we're going to charge more, we're going to have a bigger ticket. So be careful when you benchmark. McDonald's bought them. That's right. And they sold them, and there's lots of different things we don't want to get in. But is there any law firms here? No law firms. But Cravath is one law firm that everybody gets publicized all the time, wants to be like, because they charge more than anybody else. You can't just be like Cravath. You've got to be like yourself. And you've got to focus on all your stakeholders. Who's the stakeholder who's most neglected often? No, not the employee. Even more. Who's a stakeholder that we take advantage of? The happy customer. Not the happy customer. Actually, the supplier. Okay? So I'm a supplier to major companies. They, their attitude toward me often is, thanks very much, goodbye and good luck, we'll call you some other time. Don't call us, we'll call you. Which is okay. I make a good living and I'm fine with that. But it's very, very interesting that then you have very little loyalty to them in the end. So you've got to focus, when you're externally focused, on all the stakeholders. Okay. What's the paradox between customer satisfaction and customer focus? So this is always tough when you manage employees. That's meeting the customer's need today and at the same time seeing the future first. So I want to give you one example. I worked for a company called Lotus Development. Who knows what Lotus Development developed? Yes, sir, in the back. Instant messaging? No. Spreadsheets. They invented the spreadsheet. And what was the name of it? Bill?
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. How old are you? How do you even remember it? Okay?
I used to use Lotus.
Okay, he used it, 1, 2, 3. I went to 1, 2, 3. I was a management consultant. I helped them build the company in certain kinds of ways. I was involved. They started out with a bunch of guys in Hawaiian shirts and shorts. And all of a sudden, this product took off. There was no spreadsheet in 1997. No spreadsheet. That's 20 years ago. There were calculators. Okay? And there was that gigantic IBM machine you saw in Hidden Figures. Okay? There were no spreadsheets. Dan Bricklin invented it. How much of the market did they have, Bill, if you remember?
Oh, 100%.
100%. All of a sudden, this guy, Bill Gates, comes forward in 1990, and he says, I've got a spreadsheet. What's the name of the spreadsheet? Excel. The thing is junk. In fact, it's vaporware. It doesn't even work. But what does Bill Gates say? What else? What does he say? What's his strategy? He's going to give it to you for free. And Lotus costs $250. And the CEO of Lotus, Jim Manzi, says, he brings together the 1,000 employees, and he says to the 500 people who work on 1, 2, 3, sorry, but it's over for you guys. I'm not supporting the product very much anymore. I'm transferring everybody to what I see as the future. And what was the future? What was his second product? Bill, Lotus Notes. He was the most outstanding example of somebody I ever saw with external focus. Because he knew And there were a lot of people who were crying and saying it's not true, that the thing is junk. It'll never sell. We got 99% of the market. The only people who use that product are people who fool around with it because it's free. Who has 100% of the market? Excel, pretty much. So he saw the future first. And that's the difference between customer satisfaction and customer focus. He developed the #1 product for groupware called Lotus Notes. And then, unfortunately, the company could not survive. So one should not feel sorry for Jim Manzi because he made $300 million off the sale to IBM. But it is an example of sometimes when the tension comes, that there's a paradox with external focus. You need to take bigger risks sometimes. Amazon is the king of that. Does anybody know what the Fire Phone is? What's the Fire Phone? No. Here's a little product that Amazon put out. Was a what? Was a phone. Was a phone, the Fire Phone. And how much do you think they invested in it? $200 million. Chump change to them. But they are an example of an organization that's focused on next. What's next for Amazon? What? Retail stores, shopping, food. Food is what's their next thing. Now, we're going to talk about competencies. I'm not going to have enough time in certain ways to get at competencies. But what's the most critical competency that Amazon has that they knew that they built that organization on? Customer service? Who says customer service? You say customer service. Customer demand. What? Speed.
Variety.
Technology.
Convenience. But what does that all wrap around as a competency? What do I need expert employees in? Not speed. What? Technology, distribution, logistics. Okay? That's what they've understood. Now, to the person who said customer service, have you ever bought a product from Amazon? How many people here have?
Today?
How many people here have been dissatisfied with a product from Amazon? How many people have tried to call Amazon? No, you can't. What? How did you do it? There is no phone number. There is no phone number. Okay? There is no phone number for Amazon. Okay? By some weird misfortune, I saw some free thing for a vitamin. I just put a free thing for a vitamin. I signed up for it. I ended up getting vitamins for like months. My kids were hysterically laughing at me for getting sucked in by this, quote, free offer from Amazon, which I then had to sort of get out of. But that's sort of the notion, that you've got to think in other kinds of ways. And Amazon does, but they're not about customer service. The competency they're about is logistics, delivery. How do you get that to everybody? Now, they do, they would say they care about customer service, and they would say, but they are master marketers on the web. They're also brilliant technologists, okay? And the technologists and the logistics have made that company brilliant, okay? So you need those kind of people. In fact, I know one of their senior technology people in Cambridge, and he's actually pretty funny because he has no idea about customer satisfaction, no interest in that. He just is interested in the speed and the accuracy of the delivery. So, and it works, it works. You and your employees, if you're really going to be externally focused, need to always be thinking about the disruption and the disruptive mindset if you're going to really be strategists. Who are the two most disruptive companies that we all know? Who are the companies that disrupted total industries in the last 10 years? Apple. What? Uber. Not Apple. Uber. Apple has always been around. What? Uber. How did they disrupt things? Who they kill? They didn't change it. They killed it, pretty much. Okay, they've changed the taxi market. Who's the other one? Airbnb. What did they do? Okay? They just changed the hotel industry. Now, you could say the story of Airbnb is a very interesting one in logistics terms. I have two daughters who went to the Rhode Island School of Design, which is a very famous art school. And there were a bunch of people that they knew, you know, art students are always finding ways to sort of be clever and thinking about things. But there were two students who were out working in San Francisco, doing graphics. And, you know, art students also don't have that much money, unfortunately, very frequently. And they were working on things, and they said, we got to find a place for, you know, our parents to stay when they come. And we got to find a place for ourselves to move into so we can give them our apartment. That is the foundation of Airbnb. Two students from Rhode Island School of Design who recognized that they didn't know anything about technology, but they knew how to market things, and they knew how to make things attractive and simple. They were graphic designers. Two guys from RISD. That's who did it. Okay? And so you can disrupt things by being creative. But the founder, the owner, that's you, bears the ultimate risk, right? How does that feel, sometimes the risk? How does the risk sometimes feel?
Suffocating.
Suffocating. How else?
Exhilarating.
What?
Exhilarating.
Exhilarating. At times it should be exhilarating because you're pulling off something new. But it's a paradox. Now, if there's one thing I'm going to leave you with, it's the notion of paradox. That is, that you've got to hold two things in your mind simultaneously. And sometimes those two things are customer satisfaction and customer focus. And remember what Professor Porter said. You can't make all your customers happy, okay? You've got to decide who are the customers you don't want. I know a guy who's invented a new kind of vodka with natural stuff in it and all this kind of stuff. The vodka is not for people like my brother-in-law who drinks straight vodka. It's for women and men who like to go to bars and have sort of interesting drinks. You got to decide who your customers are. Now, here's a short list of what you do as a leader. You are the resource provider. You are the obstacle remover. You are the facilitator. You are the team builder. You're the supporter of ideas. And what else are you? What?
Cop.
You're the cop? Okay, what do you mean by that?
Good cop and bad cop.
You're the good cop and bad cop in what sense?
And people don't do what they're supposed to do. You got to bring the hammer.
You've got to bring, well, hopefully you don't hit them with a hammer, but you've got to bring the hammer. But I love the way people talk. And I don't know your name? Dave. Dave's honesty is really there. It feels like you have to sort of do certain kinds of things. What else are you as a leader? Yes?
Quality assurance manager.
You're the quality manager in certain kinds of ways. What else are you? You are the motivator. You are the inspirer. You are the cheerleader. You're the what?
Safety net.
You are the safety net. What do you mean by that? And it's Myron. What do you mean by you're the safety net? And I'll repeat what Myron's saying.
You're standing there when all else fails.
You are standing there when all else fails. You are the backstop. Now, when all else fails, you are the maker, you are the creator of what? What do you have to be? You can't just watch it all fail, right? You provide what?
Direction.
Direction. You are what I call option B. Okay? If option A isn't working, you're option B. And in that process, you also become not just the inspirer, but the confidence builder. Okay? You have to be the confidence builder. And in all of that, you have to be what if you're a CEO? The leader, well, we've said that, but if you're going to be the confidence builder, the supporter of ideas, all of these kind of things, the obstacle remover, the facilitator, what else do you have to be?
Comfortable, real.
Risk taker, you have to be real. You have to, what? What did you say? Who said resilient? You have to be resilient. That means you have to be able to when things don't go right, but you have to be the consistent force, okay? Because if you're off the rails, then everybody's off the rails, okay? That is the toughest thing to be, because I like what Myron said. When all else fails, you are the backstop. But if when all else fails, you lose it, then game over. Everybody loses it. And that's sort of the issue for you as a leader. I think that you're the most critical employee in lots of ways, that you are the custodian of the system as well. You see the waste, inefficiency, and losing propositions before others do, okay? That's where you are the strategist. And yet, you can't just say, oh my God, it's not working, or that sales manager stinks, or how, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to think through all of those different issues. Now, if there's a word I want you to remember, it's what? Paradox. You've got to rock the boat and keep it steady. You've got to bring down the hammer, but you've also got to be somebody who conveys that everyone is in this together, okay? Because the innovation curve is always going up. Remember, nothing is static in business. There was a guy named Andy Grove, who was his book at Intel, he was the CEO of Intel, who always used to say, being paranoid makes sense if you don't make everyone crazy, okay? And that sums up the notion of yes?
Yes, what Paradox was saying as being the change agent.
Is Paradox the same as being the change agent? You are also, as a leader, the person sort of looking to change things. But Paradox means that even as you change things, you keep a notion of steadiness. You've got to hold two concepts that are in conflict, in balance in your own mind. Okay? And that is what is difficult and what makes the most successful manager. The most successful manager is not somebody who's just brings down the hammer and not somebody who's just lenient. It's somebody in between who can do both. You've got to get everybody involved, and you need managers too. What do I mean by that? What do the managers do for you? How many of you have good managers? What does a good manager do for you?
She keeps me informed.
She keeps you informed. What else?
Brings problems to me.
Brings problems for your resolution. Yes, what else?
Ensures things go smoothly.
Ensures things go smoothly. The manager is there and is a buffer to some extent because you can't handle everything. They have to be able to, yes?
Bring problems, but they come with recommended solutions.
And they come with recommended solutions. They just don't bring problems. But they are the force of control, in a sense, in your organization. If you have to control everything, maybe you can when it's 3 or 4. But after it's more than 3 or 4, you need managers. And what is a good manager? That manager doesn't necessarily have to be the strategist, but has to be someone who can help in a lot of different ways. So, let's face it, you are the scarcest resource, okay? How many people really believe that in their guts? Okay. He said, that's something that's tough to really understand. If you are the scarcest resource, then you need to stay focused. And it may seem really simple-minded, but you need counselors, you need canaries. What's a canary? What? Somebody who tells you what's going on. You need checklists. There's a guy named Atul Gawande who just wrote a beautiful book called Being Mortal. He's one of the most brilliant neurosurgeons at Brigham and Women's Hospital. He wrote a book called Checklists. And he said, which horrified everybody, to the surgeons of the world, we need to have checklists. Why do we need to have checklists? Now, these people have been through 14 years of education. They were the ones who graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Harvard and Stanford. Checklists? Get out of here. What do I need a checklist for? I'm a brilliant neurosurgeon. 1 millimeter in one direction can cripple a person for the rest of their life. Atul Gawande said, because we all know that you have sewn sponges into people. You have actually left a sponge in someone's stomach. We need checklists. We're not superhuman. We work 14 hours a day. We need to make sure that every single thing happens because we need to prevent infection. There was an uproar when he put this book out. Who are you to tell me I need a checklist? I've studied for 14 years. I've been a surgeon for 25. People come to me begging for me to operate on them. You need checklists. You can infections all across the country because people were not paying attention to lots of different things. Understand yourself. I'm going to talk briefly about a guy named Adam Grant. He talks about that when you're a CEO, you can operate as a giver. Now, what's a giver? It's a person who really always is in a proactive mode. What would you say a giver is, Thomas?
Somebody who contributes more than they take back.
They contribute more than they take back. Now, what's a taker? The opposite. How many people know takers? How many people know givers? Okay. And then he said there's another mode, and we all operate in these modes. We operate as a taker when I'm negotiating my salary. You operate as a giver when you're doing other kinds of things. What's a matcher? That's a person who basically says, he's always kind of saying, okay, Chris, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. Kind of always operating in that mode. Always in the reciprocal kind of way. Always negotiating. So they're givers, they're takers, he says, and he studied this. He's got a book, it's called Give and Take. You get it in any library, you get it in any bookstore. Who are the most successful salesmen? He studied salesmen for 20 years. Are they givers, takers, or matchers? Who says matchers? Who says givers? Who says takers? The most successful salesmen are givers. Who are the least successful salesmen? Takers, matchers, or givers? Matchers. Takers. How many people say takers? How many say givers? They're the givers. So the most successful salesmen are the people who, you know, when you go to buy a car, they say, let me show you all this kind of stuff, call me anytime. They're givers. Let me spend 5 hours with you. You know, let me take you around in the car for a long time. The least successful car salesmen are the takers who say, well, you're here, you know, you want to buy a car, you don't want to buy a car, okay? Or they're matchers. So ironically, it's least successful and most successful, okay, that you sort of see in that sense. So all of us operate in this mode of thinking about this. Interestingly enough, if you ask first-year medicine students, okay, medical school, you've got to kill yourself to get into, right? Who are the most successful students in the first year of medical school? Givers, takers, or matchers? Takers. Who says takers? Who says givers? It's takers. In the 7th year of medical school, when the chief resident is named, that means in cardiology that the best doctor of all the students is named. Who is the person who is the chief resident? Who gets picked? Takers, givers, or matchers? Matchers? Who says givers? Who says takers? It's the givers. So the most successful chief resident is often the person who has influenced the most doctors and the most other students. In the first year, it changes. We all operate in this mode. Is it clear? We sometimes in negotiation with an employee, we're giving a lot more. Sometimes we feel like we're being taken advantage of. Sometimes we're takers. Sometimes we take more profits. And the employees want to know, hey, you know, you're driving around in a Jag, and I'm driving around in a beat up, and you know, it used to be the way, and we all feel this. I can remember when I started as a consultant very late in life because I changed careers. I was 35. And I go out with the senior partner for the firm, and he pulls up in a Porsche, and I pull up in my used Gremlin. It's 10 years old, and I've got a Ford Maverick with a column shift. He doesn't even want to ride in my car. And I say to myself, what's the relationship here? How do I? And he was great. He was just great. He looked at my car, I won't even describe it, and he said, someday you'll have a Porsche if you want it, if you really work hard and you want to stay in this firm for forever. And he had a sense of what could happen. The paradox is stay focused on the mission without ever losing empathy. What's the difference between sympathy and empathy? What's the difference between sympathy and empathy? What?
Understanding someone's situation.
Versus what?
Feeling bad for them.
Feeling bad for them. I really feel bad for you guys, the sales force. I know you're going to have to work really hard. I know you're really going to have to deliver a lot for me, but you just got to do it. I feel bad about it, but there's nothing I can do about it. Okay? That really goes over like what? A lead balloon. Okay, that is a lead balloon. I wouldn't want to tell you how many times I've actually seen someone stand up in a Salesforce meeting and say something like that. You guys are going to have to work really hard. And I feel bad for you, but you really got to do it because we really got to produce these results by the end of the term, and you got to do it for me. Oh, that's really good. You've lost sight of what it is to walk in that person's shoes. These are sort of elementary kinds of things. And you got to be very careful to apportion blame carefully. First big client I had as a management consultant, this goes back to a long time ago in the 80s. The client decided basically to stiff us. Did the project, did all the work, went in. Client said, not going to pay the bill. Not for any reason. By the way, if you do a little more work for us, I would consider paying the bill. So I take in the managing director of my firm, a guy who I've infinite respect for, and we come into the meeting. He's there because I've screwed up, right? He's there to collect. He walks in, guy gives him the same line. Managing partner stands up, says, well, I guess we're done. Walks out. Says, come on, Steve, let's go. We walk out, and he said, win some, lose some. I'm not going to argue with anybody that way. It's your fault that you didn't get some of this, but it's my fault that I let this go on as long as I did. He apportioned blame very carefully, and he said, you'll learn a lot more the next time. And let's hope this doesn't happen again. It was the end of it. It was the end of it. Now I got penalized a little bit in my bonus, but that's the way it went. But I was so amazed that he knew how to say apportion blame. And he just basically said, it's that guy's fault. I'm not putting up with it. The CEO of that company screams at us as we're walking out, where are you going? Where are you going? We're leaving, you're not paying the bill. That's it. That's the end of it. So be modest, but always influence. And remember, here are some thoughts. Again, this is what psychology has basically told us. Events don't upset you, beliefs do. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? Yes?
It's often perception of...
It's so much perception that you have to work on. Control what you can, put aside the rest. Accept everything, but don't be passive. Like you just have to accept that somebody's quit, but you can't be passive. You've got to move forward. That's what I learned from that managing director whose name is Ron. Choose who you want to be. Use morning and evening rituals. You've got to get control of your life as leaders, and that's what I want to talk about. Don't rest on your laurels, but don't drive yourself crazy. Again, a paradox. Okay? There's a guy named Popovich. Who is he? Coach of the San Francisco Spurs. He lost San Antonio Spurs. San Francisco. I just came from San Francisco. They lost the NBA championships. The next day, he brought the team together after they'd had one day off. He brought the team together. He showed the entire film of the seventh game that he had lost and pointed out every single mistake he had made. And then he went around the room and said, Tell me, Bill, tell me, Russ, what mistakes did you make in the game? The measure of who you are is how you react to something that doesn't go your way. He never yelled at a single person. He never reprimanded anybody. He started with himself, and he said, that's the measure of a man. That is what's so critical for you as a leader. It gets back to what Myron said. It's when things don't go right, how do you look at them? Greg Popovich is a model for that, not the screaming coach, the person who sort of looks at it. He actually tests, and when he brings rookies in, he puts his most seasoned player on them. And he basically beats them up a little bit when they begin their preseason practices. And he watches for the reaction of the rookie, not the talent of the rookie. So when things don't go that rookie's way, does he explode? Does he become irritated? Does he lose confidence? That's what he's concerned about. First of all, I'm going to have to go through some things pretty quickly now, but you have all this material to look at. Teams outperform individuals. How many of you have been able to form good teams in your company? Okay. That's what's so critical. It's so critical. Team basics, you can't ignore them. Teams at the top are most difficult, and most organizations still just reward individual accountability. So think about it. How can I reward a team? How can I get away from just this? This is a guy named Lencioni who has a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Absence of trust is what he says is the first thing. What is absence of trust? What do we mean? Why does absence of trust create fear of conflict?
Not being able to rely on your team members.
So you can't rely on your team members, but why does it create fear of conflict? What does he say? Why is he saying this is most critical? Yes?
Because it creates kind of a dangerous value of false harmony.
False harmony. He actually says that this is the most critical thing. If I don't really trust you, then when it comes to real conflicts, what am I not going to do? I'm not going to challenge you. I'm not going to speak up. I'm going to have, Matthew said, false harmony. He says that's one of the worst things. False harmony, everybody gets along, but everybody knows that underneath the surface, it's not so good. And by the way, you can get this book in any library. Fear of conflict leads to lack of commitment. Why? What? You check out. You basically, I don't really trust you, so I'm not really going to bring an issue to you. I just kind of, what do? I say, I do my thing. I do my thing, and in the end, what does that do? Creates no accountability, okay? Because we don't know what went wrong. We just know that that's the false harmony. Now, I talked about an engaged employee, but this is a person who says, I would endorse this company. Fidelity, as a company, has a question on its questionnaire and says, I would urge every one of my family members to invest all of my savings in this company. That's a sign that people are really engaged. What are the different segments? We don't have enough time to cover this, but we do have different segments and we have to understand those things. People are always talking about millennials and how they want so much more. They want 401ks. Why do they want 401ks? Why? What? Yeah, this is Tony, right? Because their parents. What happened to their parents? They're still working because they have to. What else happened to many of their parents? They lost their jobs. So 25 years ago, I was trying to develop 401ks and sell the idea of them. Now all of a sudden, it's rare that anybody doesn't come into a new job and say, what's the health insurance? Okay? Why? Because if you lose your health insurance, you know what's the problem. Now, what's your management philosophy? Engagement is not the same as retention. By that I mean, just because people stay doesn't mean that they're really engaged. That is as clear as anything. There's a clear deal, the give and the get. How do you hire? What are you looking for? I recommend that everybody look in the Sunday New York Times. Every Sunday there is a section called The Corner Office with a CEO just like you who talks about how he or she hires. It is a great thing. Go to your library and read it. Staffing has a great impact on engagement. Why? Because it's really tough. We don't have enough people. Okay? Superior competencies we talked about. I don't have too much time to go over this again, but always look for originals, always look for people, bring in new ideas. Focus on the right things. That's one of the problems with measurement, because that becomes the basis for the reward systems. And what do you measure well? You really have to look at that. Success depends on speed, so you've got to have that flexible organization that I talked about. And lastly, you've got to have those systems aligned. You've got to know what your total rewards package is. What are you giving? What are you getting? What is somebody getting from this organization? And how good are your internal communications and the way that you get through the organization? These are just some hints. This is why it's not about the personnel department. It's about people effectiveness and how it all works. Now, does all this pay off? The jury is not out. It pays off. Do I spend a lot of time trying to quantify how it does? Yes, I do, because people in academia always want to know, if I invest X amount, will it pay off and da-da-da-da-da. I don't really care so much. I really believe that companies can mean it when they say that employees are their most effective asset. Real people effectiveness, day after day, leads to superior execution and results, not just strategy. You need a strategy, but if you can't execute, it's all for naught. The one thing I'd leave is that I talked about you as leaders. I believe in you as leaders. I believe it takes a great deal of courage to start a business, to maintain a business, to sustain a business as a leader, especially a small business. And people talk about courage, but it is not just about being unafraid. And there's a great quote from Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison. And it was horrible, with horrible guards and things like that. But he said the hardest thing was when he got out and he had to manage people. Okay? I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave person is not one who does not feel afraid, but one who conquers that fear. He said one of the toughest things when he got out of prison and he was running a government was how to bring people together, how to focus them. He said there were a lot of times when I was really afraid that this wouldn't work, but I just had to summon up the courage so that I could triumph over it. And I wish you all the best of luck. I wish you all courage. And I'm confident that you can build your companies, make them great companies, and succeed. So good luck.